The Renaultsport take on this Gallic brand's 4th generation Clio is a very different hot hatch to anything we've seen from them before. A smaller but very powerful turbocharged engine, twin clutch automatic transmission, launch control, rally style damping, race style telemetry. Nothing's been held back. It all makes this a thoroughly modern shopping rocket, but one you'd want to own? That's what we're here to find out. Renault and motorsport have long been inseparable. Today, the company's engines routinely dominate in Formula One, and a look back through history reveals how names like Alpine and Gordini have transformed the French brand's family models into track stars and rally replicas. Cars like the Renault 5 Gordini of 1976, the market's very first hot hatch, an originator of a GTI market segment that's now borders cars as frantically fast and clever as this one, the Clio Renaultsport 200 Turbo. That last word is important. It's been a long time since Renault has turned to turbocharging in its sportiest cars. Some of my earliest driving and racing memories centre around the French brand's iconic 5 GT Turbo, a car which revitalised the small shopping rocket sector from its launch back in 1985 and continued to do so until the company switched to normally aspirated multivalve power in a succession of fast Clio models dating from the early 90s. Since the turn of the century, these have been famously fettled by Renaultsport, a Dieppe division of this Gallic brand whose very name has become a byword for excellence in the hot hatch segment. This car, though, has been its biggest challenge yet. Today's hot hatch must be leaner, more efficient, cleverer, and equipped to suit the PlayStation generation. People who simply don't understand why the turbocharged engines and paddle shift transmissions they see commonly used in every form of motorsport aren't routinely fitted to the affordable performance cars they want to drive. Properly satisfying this new class of customer meant ditching manual transmission, adding electronic driving aids and pensioning off the thirsty old 2-litre normally aspirated power plant that had thrilled Clio Renaultsport buyers since the turn of the century. In making all these changes, Renaultsport risked alienating these faithful folk. The payoff, though, will be in pleasing many more, with the completely fresh approach they'll find in this car, launched in the summer of 2013 in the UK. The hottest Clio you can buy is no longer state-of-the-art, but state-of-the-art, with its 6-speed twin-clutch automatic gearbox and smaller but equally powerful 1.6-litre turbo engine. In short, it's now a properly modern hot hatch, and we're going to drive it. Every test report you'll read on this Renault will bemoan the fact that it isn't the hot hatch its predecessor was. Not as urgent as that car, not as direct, not as fun. Well, let me add a few other observations to that little critical list. It's not as sluggish at lower revs, it's not as ridiculously thirsty, nor is it as uncomfortable to ride in or as cheaply furnished. Hit a bump when you're powering on mid-corner and it doesn't threaten to throw you into the hedge. Now, don't get me wrong, I was one of the greatest fans of the old 3rd generation Clio Renaultsport 200, but with the rose-tinted recollections, I also remember a car that was very difficult to live with and justify as regular day-to-day transport. This one's very different. Yes, that's partly because a 1.6-litre turbo engine replaces the old normally aspirated 2-litre unit under the bonnet, matching the previous 200 PS output, but bringing with it extra speed and pulling power. For me, though, the changes here go deeper than that and lie in the way that this car now has different aspects to its personality. An old Clio shopping rocket was always firm, fast, and in your face. Fun? For sure, but very one-dimensional and not at all what you'd want if you weren't in the mood. Here, in contrast, is a car that can satisfy more than just your hooligan tendencies. A car that, if necessary, can quite happily trickle through rush hour traffic and assume the role of suburban shopper. Of course, the set-and-forget nature of the twin-clutch 6-speed EDC auto gearbox helps it here, Who wants to pump their clutch foot up and down in the stop-start reality of modern motoring? I certainly don't. Presumably, Renault could have developed a manual gearbox option, but why, they reason, would anyone really want one when the EDC transmission gives you so many more options? Here's one: launch control. Yes, just like you get in a proper race car to launch you at the scenery as soon as the lights go green. It's huge fun, and perhaps is one reason why this car's quoted rest to 62 mile an hour sprint figure of 6.7 seconds on the way to 143 miles an hour flat out is the fastest of any contender in its segment. Not what you'd expect from a car that a few moments ago I was praising as a shopping runabout. So how does one become the other? The answer's very simple. It's called RS Drive. I'm talking of the driving mode selection system the French engineers have developed to create the two cars in one character I've been talking about. You don't have to use it, of course, and in fact you shouldn't if you want to maximise the comfort and efficiency of ordinary motoring. But when the road ahead opens up, the red mist beckons, and you remember what tempted you into buying this car in the first place, a simple click of this RS Drive button down here below the gear stick opens up a whole different dimension in Clio Renaultsport driving. There are two options: Sport and Race, both of which are needed to activate launch control, and each of which will see tweaks made to throttle response, engine pitch, steering feel and gear shift times, as well as a progressive loosening of the standard stability and traction aids. In fact, that electronic safety net doesn't exist at all in a race mode that requires entirely manual gear selection and reduces shift times by 25% to just 150 milliseconds. Better though, perhaps, if you're away from the racetrack, to leave the thing in Sport, where a bit of slide is still on offer without the potential for ultimate embarrassment. It would be a pity, though, to buy this car and not, at some point in your ownership, visit a circuit, perhaps on one of the Renaultsport track days regularly organised around the country. If only to properly try out what is probably my favourite feature on this car, the Renaultsport Monitor. It's an optional onboard telemetry performance tracking system that works as part of the clever R-Link multimedia setup you'll find on the plushest version of this model. And it's very, very clever, collecting data through a series of sensors and presenting it in real time using a customizable display of dials, graphs and graphics you'll find on this 7-inch dash-mounted colour touchscreen. Via this, you can access a stopwatch, also operable by GPS, monitor an RS maintenance schedule for performance consumables like tyres and brake pads, and get useful track driving tips. There are also gauges for brake pressure, coolant temperature, turbo pressure and intake temperature, plus bar graphs for everything from torque to temperatures and performance graphs for intricate acceleration mapping. It doesn't end there either. There's a real-time G-forces meter to show you how much you're throwing the car about, and a display showing wheel spin, torque and traction slip. You've got engine torque and power curves, a twin clutch gearbox guide and a screen showing steering angle together with an oscilloscope that charts electrical voltage. Last but not least, there's a sophisticated data logger that allows you to download all of this onto a PC or upload into your Renaultsport Monitor preset circuit layouts you can use as part of track sessions. All told, it's a remarkably complete setup, and no other small performance car has anything like it. A comment that also applies to a brilliant little feature you'll find buried away in the menus of the R-Link multimedia system, an application called R-Sound Effect. Stored upon it are a range of high-performance engine sounds that work to a sound management algorithm that takes into account engine RPM, accelerator pedal position and your ultimate speed. The chosen engine sound is then copied over the actual engine note and relayed into the cabin via the stereo speakers, rising and falling with reasonable realism. Here I've got everything from a 1969 Renault 8 Gordini and Alpine A110 to a modern-day Renaultsport Clio V6 and, less credibly, a 1971 MotoGP bike, and even, for some reason I can't quite fathom, a futuristic Renault Rhinostella spaceship. Yes, the whole thing's a gimmick, but the better noises are worth having, even if only because, rather disappointingly, they improve on the sound this Clio actually makes. A so-called RS sound pipe promises much, designed to port the engine's induction roar directly into the cabin. The reality, though, is enjoyment of a Subaru-style lower rev burble for a short while before a far less pleasant kind of scouring turbo noise begins to dominate. But I've talked too much of electronic silliness, of launch control, race modes, track monitors and infotanical gadgetry. You might reasonably wonder whether all this tinsel is actually there to disguise the fact that this car can't actually cut it on brilliant back roads and flat-out sweepers, bumpy bends and slippery secondary routes, the things upon which the very best shopping rockets excel, upon which this car's arch-rival, the Ford Fiesta ST, excels. But that would be to forget that this is a Renaultsport product, and this Gallic brand's Dieppe division knows a thing or two about engineering cars built to tackle roads like these. This one offers a very different kind of driving experience to the Fiesta, or indeed the previous Renaultsport version of this model. Something partly explained, of course, by the twin-clutch auto gearbox. Some aspects of the paddle shift system's operation are a little annoying. The short second gear and the big gap between third and fourth, for example. And some very impressive. The supercar-style multi-downchange function, for example. Grab and hold the left-hand paddle as you're barreling into a corner, and it bangs the box down to the lowest possible gear, ready to hurl you out the other side. Brilliant. It's all very clever, but part and parcel of a driving experience that's somehow less wild, less extreme, more mature than before, though still hugely rewarding and, yes, still fun. Many more people will be able to enjoy much more of what this car has to offer. It's readier to flatter its driver than previous fast Clios, and its performance is easier to extract for sustained periods of time. The other reasons why? Well, the engine's pulling power, there's up to 240 Newton meters of it, is developed far lower in the rev range than it was with the old 2-litre normally aspirated unit, so you don't constantly have to rev the thing to bits to make rapid progress. Then there's the neat RS diff, which works through the turns to counter both understeer and wheel spin by lightly micro-braking whichever front wheel is threatening to lose grip. As a result, the car's kept planted through the tightest corner, and you're fired on from bend to bend. Oh, and on the subject of brakes, they're really very good indeed, as befits a potential track day car, large and extremely effective. But I've saved the best feature until last. In fact, your Renault salesperson probably won't even mention it. It's called hydraulic compression control. And take it from me, forget all the fancy electronics, it's the cleverest thing about this car. Now, using technology borrowed from rallying, specifically the Paris-Dakar endurance event, it builds in a secondary hydraulic valve into the main damper body to eliminate the so-called rebound effect, which is the thing that transmits serious road surface bumps into the cabin. As a result, you can cruise through the city and crash over crests without having to trouble your osteopath on a regular basis. It explains the urban civility I was crediting this car with at the beginning of this section, whilst on more testing roads it makes you want to press on at moments where in rival cars you simply lift off, tired of being bashed about. In fact, you could even consider ordering the stiff cup chassis option that's fitted to this particular car, and which Renault expects most customers to want. Now, this drops the ride height by a marginal 3mm, adds larger 18-inch wheels shod with sticky Dunlop Sport Max tyres, and stiffens up the springs by 15%. All things that would have created a track day only machine out of the previous model. But here, the result is just something pleasantly firm and assured. A mature kind of hot hatch, a car that's finally grown up, but still remembers how to have fun. A Renault Sport Clio must look the part. This one does. All dramatic curves and muscular pumped-up wheel arches, creating a nicely hunkered down look that builds on the visual eye candy of stylist Laurens van den Akker's fourth-generation Clio body shape. True, buyers are limited to the practicality of 5 doors, but that has less aesthetic impact here thanks to a coupe profile that conceals the rear door handles in the C-pillars. The front-end design adds Renault Sport badging beneath this prominent diamond emblem, while LED daytime running lamps set into the lower part of the bumper offer up an individual lighting signature. Performance hallmarks include a deeper front bumper with Renault Sport's now familiar F1 style blade. At the back, form and function blend seamlessly, the diffuser with its rectangular exhausts and the prominent rear lip spoiler, for example, designed to work together just as they would in a single-seater race car to ensure the best possible aerodynamic performance. Inside, the driving position's high and purposeful. Not high and purposeful enough, it must be said, to offer decent over-the-shoulder vision through the restricted rear window, hence the desirability of the rear parking camera option. But front three-quarter vision is fine, and you're nicely positioned in front of a smartly designed dashboard that neatly combines both digital and analog dials. You view it through a chunky 3-spoke leather-trimmed wheel with its red-stitched straight-ahead top marker, a real driver's touch. Behind the wheel rim, you'll find mounted the same anthracite gearshift paddles that are found in a £70,000 Nissan GTR. Select the GTR engine soundtrack from the R-Link multimedia system R sound effect app, and you could almost believe you were in Japan's premier supercar. Almost. The R-Link system's 7-inch colour touchscreen dominates the centre of the dash, trimmed around with a black gloss finish that's there to contrast with the liberal splashes of red supposed to lift the intentionally dark cabin. Some of it looks quite nice, the instrument needles, the red steering wheel stitching, the door panel beading and so on. And some of it's less successful, the finish around the disappointingly cheap feeling auto gear stick, for example. You've got to love the red seatbelts though, which, as any fool knows, have got to be worth at least a second a lap. Overall, I'd say that while there are better quality feeling cabins in this class, there are a few more interesting ones. On the back seat, there's more space than the coupe-style profile leads you to expect. Easily a match for, and arguably better than, frumpier-looking 5-door rivals like Volkswagen's Polo GTI or Skoda's Fabia VRS. 2 adults will be fine on all but longish trips, and 3 children quite happy over most likely journeys. There's decent room for their possessions too. Get over the rather high loading lip and you'll find a boot that at 300 litres is one of the very largest in the class and about 15 to 20 litres bigger than most of the obvious competition. Push forward the 60/40 split folding rear backrest and you can extend it to as much as 1,146 litres, which again is far more space than most rivals can offer. Clio Renault Sport pricing starts at around £19,000. That's around a couple of thousand more than the previous model, and there's an extra £1,000 to find on top of that if you want the plusher Luxe spec version that I have here. Either way, you have to have the 5-door body shape and the EDC twin clutch automatic transmission. There are no 3-door or manual gearbox options. It might though be just worth mentioning that if you like the look of this car but need something that's more affordable to buy and run, Renault makes a Clio GT line model that'll fit the bill. With 120 brake horsepower on tap, it offers 80 brake horsepower less, but that makes it 20% more economical. It comes with the same EDC gearbox you get here, plus a £1,500 asking price saving. The next issue to consider is where this car fits within the small hot hatch market. Your perspective on that will depend a great deal on the importance you attach to the two main changes Renault has made to this car over its predecessor: the move to a 5-door body style and automatic paddle shift transmission. You can't have either of those things in a Ford Fiesta ST or a Peugeot 208 GTI, these being the two other small shopping rocket models that most readily spring to mind as rivals, primarily because they were launched at the same time as this Clio. So let's start by comparing apples with apples and looking at little Super Mini-based GTIs that offer 5-door versatility and flappy paddle shifters. That won't take long because there are only 3, all of them Volkswagen Group products, sharing the same 1.4-litre turbocharged and supercharged engine. Skoda's Fabia VRS costs around £1,500 less. The 5-door version of Volkswagen's Polo GTI costs around £1,500 more, and an Audi A1 Sportback 1.4 TFSI in 185 PS S-Line S-Tronic guise costs just over £2,500 more. Now, all 3 of these cars can match this Renault's performance, but offer much less cleverness and driver involvement. If you want that, you'll have to accept something with 3 doors and a stick shift, which brings me back to the Fiesta ST and 208 GTI models I touched on before. The Ford looks a couple of £1,000s cheaper at first glance, but if you spec it up to Renaultsport standards, you'll find yourself much closer to the kind of £19,000 budget you'll need not only for this Clio, but also for a Peugeot 208 GTI. That's the kind of sum that would also get you into similarly powerful small hot hatches like Alfa Romeo's Maito Quadrifoglio Verde, that's smart but not quite as fast, or Vauxhall's Corsa VXR, manic but much pricier to run. Perhaps a closer match is Seat's Ibiza Cupra, which shares the same 1.4-litre turbo and supercharged engine and auto gearbox combination used in the 3 Volkswagen Group products I mentioned earlier, and their less intense sporting focus. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a Clio Renaultsport 200 Turbo EDC that you really want, then a clinching factor in your purchase decision may well be the items Renault has chosen to include in the standard spec. There are plenty to consider. Core features that are part and parcel of this Clio's appeal include the 6-speed EDC twin-clutch automatic gearbox with its launch control feature, the RS Diff that maintains traction in difficult conditions, and the RS Drive system with its normal, sport and race modes. And beyond that, well, let's start outside, where as well as 17-inch Renaultsport alloy wheels, you get an aggressive body kit, including an F1-style front blade and a rear diffuser with twin chrome rectangular exhausts. Moving inside reveals all the expected Renaultsport personalisation, with highlights including the leather-covered steering wheel and the aluminium foot pedals. Other standard kit runs to satellite navigation, air conditioning, cruise control with a speed limiter, Bluetooth phone compatibility, a Thatcham Category 2 alarm, a trip computer, hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and a decent quality Archimede stereo system with fingertop controls, USB compatibility and powerful bass reflex speakers. Upgrading to the plushest Luxe model that I have here gets you power folding mirrors, electric rear windows, auto lights and wipers and climate control. But the most important addition is the R-Link multimedia system with its 7-inch colour touchscreen and upgraded TomTom sat-nav setup. You'll need to pay an ongoing live services subscription to fully use everything that R-Link has to offer. But once you have, through the touchscreen, you'll be able to access the Renault R-Link store for viewing or downloading specialist apps for everything from tweeting to games. With the right app added, you can also search yellow pages, check your emails, use a text-to-speech function, and check out the local weather. Personally, I'd first go straight for the R Sound Effect app, which can simulate up to 7 different engine sound profiles, which are then synchronized with live speed and acceleration, so you can match your Clio sound to the mood you're in. Brilliant. And options? Well, the main one is the Torta Cup chassis I've got here, with its lowered ride height, sticky Dunlop Sport Max tyres, shod on larger 18-inch black gloss alloy wheels, and springs and dampers that are 15% stiffer. Renault expects 70% of buyers to choose this package. I'd also want the Renaultsport monitor with its onboard telemetry performance tracking system. And if I had any budget left after all that, nice to have items would include heated leather RS sport seats, a rear parking camera, and Renault's distinctive liquid yellow metallic paint finish. Pricey because it's painted twice. Disappointing though that the lovely Recaro competition style seats you could pay extra for on the previous model are no longer offered. Safety has always been a Renault strong point, a record that continues here with a 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating having been achieved, together with high-class rankings for pedestrian and child protection. Now this is all due to a complete safety kit roster running to twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus Isofix child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, a pedestrian-friendly bonnet, and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. Plus there are, of course, anti-lock brakes with emergency brake assist for sudden stops that'll be immediately advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning flashes. This is where Renault's decision to move from 2-litre normally aspirated power to this car's far more efficient 1.6-litre turbo unit really pays off. Also aided by a 36 kilogram weight reduction, the running costs of this Clio Renaultsport are quite simply in a different league to those of its predecessor, a hot hatch which struggled to dip beneath the 200 grams per kilometre of CO2 barrier and couldn't even manage to average 35 miles to the gallon. Not acceptable in today's economic climate, even for a potent shopping rocket, which is why this car manages a massive 25% improvement. Provided you've got the RS Drive driving mode selection system on its normal setting, this car is supposed to be able to return 44.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 144 grams per kilometre of CO2. Renault reckons that this change will annually save owners £325 on road tax, and all this achieved despite the addition of a 6-speed EDC twin-clutch auto gearbox. It's probably due to that transmission that manual gearbox rivals like Peugeot's 208 GTI and Ford's Fiesta ST are a fraction less expensive to run, enough to pitch them in one VED band lower. Still, there's not much in it, and the differences will be further narrowed when you've factored in that this Clio will cost you a little less to insure. It's rated at Group 29 rather than Group 30 for the two cars that I've just mentioned. You can also maximise your returns in this car if you've ordered a version fitted with the R-Link multimedia system, and within that select and keep an eye on the setup's useful eco driving menu. To be honest, I can't imagine many potential Renaultsport owners bothering too much with that. Folk who are looking to improve their running costs in a car of this kind are probably more likely to be considering the 4 rival Volkswagen Group products that you'll find all powered by a 1.4-litre turbocharged and supercharged engine and auto gearbox package. These being the Seat Ibiza Cupra, the Volkswagen Polo GTI, the Skoda Fabia VRS, and the fastest version of Audi's A1 1.4 TFSI. In each case, you could expect slightly more efficient returns than you'll get from this Renault, but you'll also get slightly less speed and involvement too, the two things that hot hatch motoring should really emphasise. Renault also reckons that this Clio's standard 4 Plus package will be a major buying inducement. Clio Renaultsport buyers get free routine servicing for the first 4 years of ownership, excluding wear and tear items, and with a 48,000 mile limit. Longer service intervals and longer life components will also keep down ongoing costs. You also get a 4-year warranty with unlimited mileage in the first 2 years and a 100,000 mile limit in the subsequent 2 years. And there's 4 years of roadside cover with European assistance included for the first 3 years. That only leaves depreciation. An attractive asking price, big demand from a huge owner community already excited by the tuning potential of this car, and improved build quality can only ensure that residual values stack up even better than the last generation of hot Clios, which is good news for owners. Expect this car to hold on to 41.5% of its original value over 3 years. Motorsport, they say, improves the breed. It's just that on most small sporting cars that isn't immediately obvious. This one's different. The paddle shift transmission, the launch control, the hydraulic damping, the circuit telemetry system, it all comes straight from the track to your driveway, which you'd think ought to be what Renault Sport products should be all about. So why has this one aroused such controversy in the motoring media? Probably because it's so different from its much-loved predecessor. You won't jump in and scare yourself in the first 50 yards, but then maybe that's a good thing. I didn't think so the first time I drove it, but the more miles I've done, the more I've been able to appreciate what the development team were trying to do. It's a car that sets a new technological standard in its segment, and that can be a barrier to the instant pleasures that so characterised its predecessor. Get to grips with it all though, and the surprising truth is that this new take on Clio Renaultsport motoring can be every bit as rewarding as anything that has gone before. Could it be even better? Of course it could, and Renault Sport's development history suggests that one day it will be. In the meantime, there's no longer a shopping rocket division between high-tech hot hatches and properly involving ones. This car can be both, which is why, if you're looking to buy in this segment, you need to drive it.